I'm going to just start talking about Semioid contributions, but you should recognize that all of these things we've been dealing with are ways to share your great ideas. And if you don't think you have great ideas, just put them in front of an editor and you'll find out that you do have great ideas. So you can see this, I assume. I have to ask that, right?
Yes,
Glenn,
this
you
one
can
works.
see. Yeah, okay, this one works. Okay, so publishing semioid modeling scenarios and technique narratives in general. What's the process of publishing classroom modeling materials using differential equations? We're going to talk a little bit about that today. We have an online publication in Semioid, the Community of Practice. I'm going to dare to hit this, and we will go and see that web page. I'm going to log in because in a moment I'm going to want to get to something that's meaningful. That's my dashboard. Currently, Semioid sits on a platform called HubZero out of West Lafayette. It was grown with the nanotechnology grant years and years ago. But Semioid is moving into Cubes Hub, and you registered for this conference at that portion of our site, which is migrated. All the materials that I'm going to be talking about today that you may be contributing to, I hope, are still on the old site, and we have to migrate them. We publish these materials through a peer review in a double-blind system, as Paul suggested. I learned this by working as a journal assistant for Paul Halmos when I was at Indiana University about what double-blind really means. I won't go into that detail. There's about 5,000 members in this Semioid community. Many of them, or a good number of them, just signed up for a pre-t-shirt, and we've not heard from them, and others are more actives. We publish two kinds of things. One is called a modeling scenario, and it is the heart of what we're trying to do. It enables a teacher to take this material and put modeling first to drive the mathematics of differential equations. That's the goal. You know, sometimes you have to straddle and bounce a little ahead, a little back. And as you just saw maybe in the earlier presentation with Jenny, you have to adapt it to your own. So all of the materials inside Semioid are OER and the most generous Creative Commons license, namely you can take it, you can modify it, you can adapt it. The LaTeX code is there with all the images. And if you use Word, the Word file is there. We publish for the PDF version of everything. The technique narratives are more looking towards the technical, how do you solve differential equations and what techniques might you use or what special investigations might you use. But even there, they're slightly model related, and we try to get authors to touch models as well. But the admission there is, look, you're going to have to learn how to do certain sort of techniques because your cognate discipline that sent you there needs you, or just that's the way we teach our discipline. So those are more like that. The predominant numbers of materials that we have are in the modeling scenario. We have forums, we have publications, we have about 1,000 different resources, reviewed articles. They're not refereed, they're just put up there. So if you read a good article in the UMapp journal, by the way, they're all good, but if you read one and you want to refer people to that, that's a great place to put that down and rant and rave positively about that, okay? All materials inside Semioid, with the exception of the textbook, which we're using as a sustainability effort to generate funds to keep Semioid going, all of them are free and OER. And we have two versions. We have a student version, which is publicly available. And then we have a teacher version, which is available to people who register in Semioid, which is free and can clearly identify themselves as a teacher. And the difference between the student version and the teacher version is that the teacher version may have comments interspersed, maybe pedagogical watch-outs, lookouts, landmines, and have a set of comments at the end for the teacher about how long it might take, how they've developed this, how they reviewed it, and it might have additional resources. In addition, each of these has a spot in the Semioid community and has additional resources. Paul mentioned with the journal, occasionally there's a data set that you just don't put into the article, but you put that at the site. or some video that you're trying to help either students or teachers. If the resources available is appropriate for students, then we put it at the student site. If the resource is available and it's appropriate for teachers and students, we put it at the teacher site, okay? So we welcome the publications or variations of remedial scenarios. We just saw those with Jenny in the last one, where she modified 2 of them and made them wonderfully useful in Calculus 1. There are instructions at a tab in Simiode, and it looks like this. It's author information, double-blind review system. It's got everything you kind of want to know. It's gone over the material that I've said. We used to have a journal, a manuscript management system that we paid about $3,000 a year, and we just couldn't justify that cost. So we are back with the send it to the director, who happens to be me, and he has an electronic folder. When I started the Crypto Journal in 1977, I had a desk with folders and manila folders, and I lived that way, okay? As I just said, we do have a resource guide which lists kind of like a table of contents looks like. And if you click on here in this accordion fashion, you can see roughly they're numbered by what would be in chapter 1. And these are all technique narratives about how to do an integrating factor. But all of these have nice examples with them. They concentrate on the technique more than the examples, but they point there. And after you get through a bunch of these, you saw one on bifurcation, random perturbation, dimensionless variables, you get into the activities themselves. And so these are full-blown activities. And here's one on the one that came up before, that was earlier on the oil slick. And this is the student version. That's what's publicly listed. And what you do is you go and you can download that and look at it. You can print it. When you get to the teacher's version, there's additional materials, including the LaTeX files, the image files, and you can modify those. That's what Jenny did with this particular one, so that we have a 1-005A. As I said, we're migrating these to the cubes. And so you would submit a final submission. Oftentimes authors are attached. We then ask for resubmission if we're doing, since we're doing a double-blind referee. We try to get back a Word version as well, although we don't get many of those, but there are some. We try to respond by giving referees 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes, I must tell you, stuff is so good, we just give a gentle colleague a quick read and we just go with it. I tend to scrutinize things. Paul is absolutely right. Authors are the worst proofreaders. And you all know that when you're in the middle of a presentation that you've authored and you see a typo on the 3rd page. Hopefully it's not an embarrassing one. You have to wonder about it. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. If you're interested, as Paul invoked, we can always use help with referees or reviewers, whichever you wish to be called, and participate. What I've done is just to link these, and all of the PowerPoints that authors at this meeting are going to use are going to be online, so you can revisit all of these. These just give you examples. I'll just show you one here that we published just recently from Jake Dumpkin out at Winona, and it's got to do with falling darts and the usual stuff. And what he's done is measure the darts with the iPhones and against a brick wall. So you have the speed of the iPhones in frame per second, and you have the height of the bricks. And so you can measure the fall of this rubber dart and experience resistance. So all of these are there. They're just examples. I'm going to stop sharing and encourage you to not only do creative things in your classroom, use modeling, but to share them with each other. And maybe you don't feel comfortable doing that, but I got news for you. There are a lot of people that would be interested in what you're doing. And if you get good feedback from your students, you're going to get good feedback from fellow teachers who are going to sometimes just jump up and down and say, you can't believe how well it worked for me. The M&M modeling with death and immigration that I discovered and have used with thousands of cadets at West Point. I should have gotten stock in the Mars Candy Company, but you can't believe how many people will say, "Oh, that was so cool." And I since I'm trying to encourage others, I published it, but I probably wouldn't have thought twice about it unless I was in this game. And so you probably do cool projects too. And even if someone has done something very similar to yours, your take is going to be different enough that we're going to want to publish that. It may not be true in the journal world, I understand that, but in our case, what you put into it, what you bring, the flavor you bring into it, makes it rich. So we need to stop and go to possible breakout rooms, or maybe you want to go over to the Scudem breakout rooms at 5. But what we're trying to do for those of you who are in this session, and we really appreciate your being here, is to encourage you to write up what you do in your classroom. It counts for goodie points on any resume. But most importantly, you don't realize what student mind you're touching when you write up what works in your classroom and goes through another colleague with their enthusiasm, because they are enthusiastic when they read it. They go, "Oh, that is totally cool," and it works. And I think the most flattering thing is if you could go to a conference and the talk comes up, and the first thing the talk says is, "I got this idea from Bill Schwartz's modeling scenario," and you just happen to be Bill Schwartz in the audience. It is no greater reward than to hear that someone else found your teaching idea to be useful. I see Glenn here. Glenn has written textbooks, he's written materials. But when you see a person in the audience telling you, "I spawned this idea from that," that's quite rewarding. So I'm going to close this session. Unless there's a specific question, I'll pause for a second. And leave this and suggest that the next time meetings are at 5 o'clock, and I need to get to one. So have a good day. Good to see you, Rosemary.